CSR Racing is the most popular mobile drag racing franchise ever. Across its 3 games, it's amassed 110 million downloads, and there's pretty good reason for that. In general, they're all pretty good with a lot to offer. Tons of cars, lots of game modes, and really good graphics at the time they were made. But there's one aspect about each game that nobody really ever went into, and that's the story. Each one is different and has their own unique lore. So I'm gonna go over the story in each game and explain why the first one is so weird. Custom Street Racing was released on June 28, 2012 by Natural Motion Games. The game starts off on an empty drag strip with a red Mustang. This is just the tutorial to get the basics of the game. The agent tells you what to do, and after you complete it, you go against an opponent. After beating them, an anonymous donor gives you $25,000, which you then use to buy your first car. And man, aren't there some options. Out of all the cars you could select, the Dodge Dart has to be the saddest of the bunch. There's absolutely no reason to get it, and you'd be an idiot for choosing it over the vast options available. After totally not choosing that car, you get sent back to the car showroom. I will say it's one of the nicest ones I've seen out of any mobile game. The music fits it pretty well too. Heading onto the map, you meet the CSR Race official. He shows you the game modes you can play to earn cash. Regulation races allow you to farm cash as quick as possible. Ladder races is this tournament-esque mode where with each race, the difficulty and the prize gets higher. Daily battles is a mode where every 24 hours you get to race a random car for money. And crew races is where you progress through the main story. The campaign has a tier system, where each one has a crew with faster, more expensive cars. Tier 1 is the Fangs, Tier 2 is the Iron Samurai, Tier 3 is the Stallion Riders, Tier 4 is the War Pigs, and Tier 5 is the Silver Skulls. Yo, Alita, what's up? You should hit me up 9 years ago. You have to beat all the crew members, then beat the crew leader 3 times. Your first opponent is Luther of the Fangs. Now this race is purposely difficult because they want to show you how to upgrade your car, and right after I did, they're already trying to get me to play CSR 2. Which reminds me, because this game is no longer supported, there is no multiplayer, but at one point it was a mode you can play, and it had this sort of gambling system. With every win you got, your prize money would increase, and you could either go to the top and win big, or cash out with whatever you had. But if you lost a race, you would also lose all your money. Now the original download of this game no longer works, so I had to download a modded version, and because the game isn't supported anymore, they don't run ads on it, so I couldn't watch any to refill my gas or anything like that. So for those reasons, I modded the currency in a video game. Figuratively, after not maxing out my car, I destroy the entire Fangs crew, which left me with just Papa Biz, and Big Papa drives a Mini Cooper. I wonder if they did that intentionally. After utterly destroying him with no remorse, you have the option to race for his car. If you lose though, you have to give him 2 gold, which you only earn by leveling up, and you only get 1 per level. I don't know who thought that made sense, but whatever. Before you race, the game will try to get you to spend $5 on some special nitrous that'll give you an advantage, which at first is whatever. I get it, games have to make money, but what makes it annoying is that you could win without it if you just max out your car. I personally don't like obtaining boss cars. It kind of removes the bossness of the car, plus it's not that helpful in the next tier, but if you want to, you can get it. Now I know you're seeing that I did race him for the car and won, and yes, that does mean I restarted the game and re-maxed out everything just so I can go back to where I was and miss out on the opportunity to race his car. I know it doesn't make sense, but shut up. Since you moved up, you have to buy a tier 2 car, and there are a lot more options to choose from. The options I choose were the ones I chose when I first played the game, by the way. Oh yeah, there's also a mechanic that'll temporarily tune your car up for a certain amount of races. Obviously, this guy is kind of useless to me at this point. Right after I beat Papa Biz for the 3rd time, he gets on the phone with Yoshiro, the leader of the Iron Samurai, and he says something weird. He says that I remind him of Nitro. Yoshiro responds saying that his obsession with him does him no favors. This is something to keep in mind for later. Now, as I destroyed his crew, Yoshiro came off very rude. And I know the crew leaders are supposed to be mean and everything, I get it, but like, he was exceptionally mean. Like, dog, what does my fashion sense have to do with this? I'm not even wearing anything. Wait, no, like, I am, but like, I eventually faced Yoshiro himself in his yellow 370Z. That must mean 370 years old because he got absolutely murked. After realizing my fashion sense was totally awesome, he makes a call to Alita, who he references as his love. Ooh,
he likes her.
She then mocks him, saying, "Did you get beat by the new kid? Want mommy to kiss it better?" He then explains how even though the bay may separate them, he would cross it 1,000 times to protect her. She says they were done a long time ago and reminds him that she's ranked above him. W crew leader, get absolutely owned. I then bought a tier 3 car, totally properly upgraded that, and then totally fairly beat each member of her crew. This is one of my issues with this story. You can kind of learn a little bit about the crew leaders, but as for the crew members themselves, you don't know anything about them. It's just, oh, you race this person and you're totally not gonna win, and then you do win and they're like, well, no. The game is 13 years old, so I get it, but I thought I should mention it. By the way, Papa Biz and Carlito look completely different from their original designs, but they are much better now. And Papa Biz was known as Papa Bone. Yeah, it was probably a good idea to change that. Rico also looked different too. Elita's crew is a bunch of rich horse riders, and something that I found to be cool and interesting was that even if your car was maxed out, your last race against Belita was still hard. It's the same with Errol, but I don't know why they did it for tier 3 specifically. I guess it is more fitting to her elitist persona. After overcoming the odds, she makes a call to Carlito, the leader of the War Pigs. He kinda mocks her and she says the same thing will happen to him. He insists that won't happen and invites her to come over to his club, and she reminds him of her status as well. Winning attitude even though you lost, gotta respect that. He then refers to her as Condessa and that he knows her secret. I don't know if you guys saw it, but on her license plate it says Condessa. I don't know what that secret is, but it was never touched upon in the game again. It might have had something to do with her time in Sao Paulo, because she was very hostile after that. Now, I'm not saying I lost the final race on purpose, but I didn't race her. I then bought an R8 and spent seconds upon seconds maxing it out. Carlito was rather neutral about me beating his crew. He gave credit where credit was due, but was still competitive. After getting chest wins against a pretty cool colored ZR1, he hits up Errol, telling him to watch out for my specific car. Which is funny because Errol owns the exact same car. His is just faster and cooler. Carlito also states that I'm like Nitro. I'm not sure in what ways other than the fact that I'm just winning all the time. I mean, I guess there's just not much substance to that. He then replies stating that Nitro was dead before he even started racing, and that me beating his rubbish crew didn't mean anything. Bro said rubbish. You know what that means? British alert. He then tells him to remember that when I kick him back to the skate park, which is exactly what I intend to do. So I quickly bought a Pagani Zonda, maxed that out, and did that exact thing. I will say I really did like the Silver Skulls' cars. None of them seem cheap and basic. I also like that Lee's license plate said El Juan. After claiming my independence against, in my opinion, the coolest boss car in the game, every crew leader congratulates me. The only person left salty being Errol. I will say I did like how each of these crews had their own aesthetic. The Fangs had a street look, even if their cars didn't match that. The Iron Samurai resembled things of a samurai. Elita's crew is wealthy, whose lineage seems to involve owning horses. The War Pigs seem to be a part of a nightclub, and the Silver Skulls were these rebellious British punk rock kids. After listening to Errol smack on his sour grapes, I'm told I'm getting a call from a sponsor. It turns out this sponsor was the one who originally gave me the $25,000 at the beginning of the game. That guy being Nitro, the one who invented CSR Racing. Now I know what you're all thinking. Wasn't he dead? Well, it turns out he faked a crash against Papa Biz because he didn't want his legacy to be tarnished, which is weird. You could have just retired. Was it that difficult to just be like, alright bro, I'm like 50, I'm gonna stop racing. I'm at the point again where I need blind spot cameras and stuff, so I can't keep this on any longer. I don't know, I don't get it. Why did he have to fake a crash? He then mentions he might come out of retirement. What do you mean come out of retirement? You're supposedly dead. And if that's the case, you could have just retired. This makes absolutely no sense. So it turns out CSR Racing is a racing organization, something that was not stated at the beginning of the game. I'm sure you can tell by like the CSR Racing officials and stuff, but still it wasn't just blatant. Well, that seems to be it, right? Well, there's the world tour, where you go around taking down crews in different countries to become the best racer in the world. Wait, you're telling me there's a crew in each country, and each crew member has their own crew that you have to race, and then you have to beat the crew leader 5 times? There, I finally did it. I beat the world tour. I beat the entire thing. Now we get to move on to internationals, where there's even more races. Yeah, no, you get the idea. Race some more, beat Nitro, who's the final boss, and win a special car. There, that's the game. I will say this game has a ton of content. The issue is it's just very repetitive, which on one hand, I get it. You can't really do much with a drag racing game, but my gosh, it took me 3 days just to beat the world tour, and I was hacking in Minecraft. I couldn't imagine how long it would take to actually grind this game out, which again is a good thing. I just wish it wasn't as dull and repetitive. The story also makes absolutely no sense. I like that the crew leaders have their own personalities and are very different, but there's just not much going on outside of that. So let's take a step back periodically to a story that's more fleshed out. CSR Classics released on October 17th, 2013. It takes a classic spin on the already popular game. Every car in this game is at least 50 years old. You can even drive a Ford Model B. Now that's hype. What's different about this game is that you have to restore the cars you own. You can purchase them in loved or unloved condition. Loved condition cars still need some upgrades, but for the most part they're pretty good, but they're more expensive. And unloved cars are completely rusted out and need a ton of work done on them. Many mechanics and features are the same from the original CSR, but the campaign is different. This story is about exposing corruption in the CSR franchise, and as you move up the tiers, you learn more and more about who's involved and why. Tier 1 is the authentics, Tier 2 is the thrillers, Tier 3 is the high rollers, Tier 4 is the lucky sevens, and Tier 5 is the house. Every time you beat a crew leader, your agent discovers more information on them. Every crew leader from tiers 1 to 4 have some sort of reason as to why they work for the crew leader of Tier 5, Baledin. Marco was a thief who supposedly cleaned up his act when he met Baledin. Olivia got herself into debt and works for Baledin to pay him back. It seems to be the same for Lord Aziz, although he may not actually owe him. And Candy seems to be working for him so she can sneak Marco away. After you beat Baledin, he gets arrested and all the crew leaders elect a new league leader, that being Marco. Unfortunately, it turns out that Marco is secretly working with Baledin and this was all part of the plan. Honestly, that's such a great plot twist. I just wish there was more after that. But that's essentially the entire game. It got the least support in the series, but there's still a lot to it. The only issue I had was that all the cars had very similar gear ratios, which I get since old cars didn't have a lot of them, but it made a very grindy, repetitive game even more repetitive. Also, the original download for this game didn't work either, so I had to mod it as well. But all in all, it's a great game and I really enjoyed it. But we've looked into the past long enough. Let's see what's ahead of us in the future. CSR Racing 2 was released on June 28, 2016. It's the latest and only currently supported game of the trio. It's much like its predecessors, except the graphics are 100 times better. Each car has its own unique personal sound, unlike the other games that just reuse the same ones. A lot of them didn't even fit the car. There's more customization options and various colors to choose from, although this time you do have to pay in-game currency for it. The environments in this game are also super cool and detailed. You can race on a sunny day or in the slippery rain, you can burn rubber late at night, and even in the snow. All we need is the jungle roads, sports car challenge style. There's also a new currency called keys that you can collect to open crates that contain parts for cars, actual cars, and both. I'm sure you could tell by the colors, but the bronze keys give the worst rewards and the gold keys give the best. The story is about a guy named Jerry, the owner of Pit Row Racing, having his entire car collection stolen. You need to find a way to get them back. Now obviously you can't just ask some random Joe and expect to get an answer, so you have to look underground, where TR1 takes place. Here you'll find the New Fangs, led by KJ. He starts off rude like all the other TR1 bosses, but starts rooting for you the more you win against his crew. What I like about CSR2 is that the crew members have their own personalities, even if you don't see much of it. Their cars have their own style and are unique to themselves. They're not just some recolored car you can get in the dealership. And before any of you say you can get KJ's car, OGs know there used to be the Cyan FRS. After beating him and his crew, he tells you some someone in the hills knows where the cars went, which brings us to tier 2. Over here, it's all about fashion and style, and while the sun's hot, the cars are even hotter. I'd say the Gold Rushers have the second best lineup of crew cars, first obviously being tier 5. Ashley stands at the top of the social hierarchy, being the leader of the crew. I am quite surprised, however, that her car was rather underwhelming. I mean, out of all the cars that were stolen, you chose the CLA 45 wagon? Look, the CLA 45 is a great car, but one of your crewmates has a Boxer. Step it up, dog. I will say though, that thing came in clutch in some racing events. After destroying that paddy wagon, Ashley gets all salty and says she got the cars from some folks in the outskirts. Over there is where tier 3 lies, and Azer and Inferno don't take too kindly to strangers, but their cars are just as strange. They all look to Kurtz for guidance, who leads the pack in her Mustang HPE 750. As you blow past her crew, Kurtz slowly admits that she and her crew stole Jerry's cars. More on that later though. After beating her, you get half her crew arrested and she flees, refusing to give any more information about the cars. In search for more answers, you enter the CSR Grand Finals tournament, where tier 4 takes place. There's some familiar faces, and some new ones too. Your first opponent is KJ, who shows up with the newer, much faster car. Ashley comes back out of left field with the Camaro. I'm not hating, I'm just surprised. Donna makes an appearance with a rare imported Ferrari F50, and her boss Daniel is up next in a super cool Viper ACR. Your last opponent is Shax's protege, Victor Kidd, and after winning the grand finals against him, you get Shax's attention. Seeing that you just owned his best racer, he offers you a sponsorship opportunity at his company, Shax Industries, where the final tier resides. Before you become Tyler's new golden boy, he wants to reassure your skill as a driver. He sets up races with his staff to gather data about your car's capability as well as your own. Larry tests your car's performance in his GTA Spano. Dana wants to make sure your grand finals win wasn't luck by having you pit against her GT3 RS. John Harkness looks to analyze your reaction times in his 177, but lets his emotions get the best of him, which causes him to be fired. L employee. He's also Summer's dad. After sending John home with the milk, Shax tells you there is no sponsorship deal and that he used you to expose your weaknesses so Victor Kidd can take advantage of them. But after getting absolutely mogged for the 4th time in a row, he's immediately fired. Honestly, deserved. Ain't no way you analyze my flow and still lost. Now it's just you and Tyler, an underdog versus the CEO of a massive parts manufacturer. As you triple clap his corporate cheeks, he tells you that since Pit Row Racing was making a rather large dent to his cash flow, he ordered Kurtz to steal Jerry's collection, which he then scrapped for parts and sold them back to us as upgrades. If that isn't one of the most slimy schemes ever, I don't know what is. The Agera R Shax is racing you in isn't even his. After thoroughly sticking it to the man, everybody from the previous tiers congratulates you. It's only KJ and Ashley, but whatever, they're real ones. This is followed up by Shax warning you about the Tempest, which I won't get into. There's still a lot more to the game. There's tons of events and trials that they have, and while I will admit I'm not knowledgeable on any of the major problems of the game, I'd say it's a pretty good sequel. Wait. There's CSR 3? I won't even get into this unreleased dumpster fire. CSR is an interesting franchise. It's the only series that did 3D drag racing right. Well, besides old Nitro Nation, but even that game had its problems. I remember being excited for CSR 2's launch and playing it on my potato phone. The game is super popular and has been well received, and I completely understand why. Now, it may have fallen off, I don't completely know, but at one point, you can say with certainty that CSR 2 was the greatest drag racing game ever. And honestly, considering that it's been almost 10 years, that probably won't change for a while.